Are we already in World War III? What if World War III has already begun and we simply haven't called it that yet? The people living through World War I didn't call it World War I or the First World War. At the time, it was simply known as the Great War. And only later, once historians understood the scale of what had happened and they could look back, with the benefits of hindsight, did it actually become known as the First World War. And this raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if we are living through something similar right now? When historians look at a world war to identify it, they usually look for a few key indicators. So major powers confronting each other, alliances forming into blocs, clearly defined blocs, conflicts spreading across multiple regions, and warfare expanding beyond the battlefield into economics, energy, and obviously now, in the 21st century, technology, cyberspace, hybrid tactics. And if you looked at the world through this lens, excuse my cat, this picture becomes harder to ignore. A logical starting point for World War III would be the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. Russia had already used military force beyond its borders before in the Russian-Georgian war. We saw it in Moldova with Transnistria, the annexation of Crimea in 2014. But 2022 was different because it wasn't just a limited intervention, it was a full-scale invasion. It was intended to topple the Ukrainian government and to effectively redraw Europe's security map. In the wake of that, we saw countries across NATO mobilizing weapons, intelligence, training and sanctions on a scale that hadn't been seen since the Cold War. And the war in Ukraine, it's worth noting, has actually become the largest conventional war since the end of the Second World War. At the same time, Russia has drawn support from countries such as Iran, North Korea, and China, creating the rough outline of opposing geopolitical blocs. But now, as we're seeing with Iran, the battlefield is no longer just confined to Ukraine. So look at what's happening in the Middle East and been happening in the Middle East now for a number of years. We've seen Iran as a long-term agitator in the region against its neighbors. Obviously, it's easy to say Iran is an enemy of Israel and Israel is an enemy of Iran, but actually Iran has been agitating in most of the Arab Middle Eastern nations now for many, many years. And obviously now last weekend we saw Iran being attacked by the US and Israel. And those attacks, if anything, have just been escalating over the last week. We saw the US sinking a certain Iranian surface vessel just south of Sri Lanka. Now Iran sits beside the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the key energy choke points in the world. A fifth of global oil actually transits through the Strait of Hormuz. And as we've seen now the last couple of days, the price of oil has spiked significantly. It's over $100 a barrel now. And when oil prices spike, obviously, insurance rates increase now because obviously the threat of the Strait of Hormuz, tankers are hesitant to transit the strait. We're seeing oil facilities, processing facilities backing up with storage. We're seeing Iran targeting Gulf coastal states to try and put pressure on those states, to put pressure on the US to pull back on its attacks. Obviously, a lot of these countries are aligned or openly supportive of the US. So what began maybe as a regional conflict has actually now spread into something far larger. Energy warfare, disrupted global trade, proxy attacks, intelligence gathering, intelligence sharing, economic shockwaves felt around the world. And this is exactly how a large global conflict would evolve or unfold. It's worth noting that China is providing quite a substantial amount of intelligence information to Iran, obviously to defend itself. The same thing with Russia. Russia is also providing a lot of intelligence to Iran. And it's also worth noting, obviously, that this presents a golden opportunity for China to gather intelligence on the US's combat capabilities as well. So no doubt they will be shadowing a lot of the US vessels in the region. They will be recording as much electronic information as they can, and they do have a very sophisticated electronic warfare vessel in the region as well at the moment. And there's quite a bit of chat online about that. There's a lot of pictures on them. You can see it's very, very distinct, fairly large surface vessel. It's got a lot of very big domes for electronics in there. So this is definitely shaping up in terms of blocks to look like it's spreading beyond just a Russia-Ukraine, Iran versus US/Israel. There are very clear blocks that are forming there, and it's also now spreading a little bit more, potential to spread to other areas of the world as well. It's worth remembering also in 1914, the regional conflict in the Balkan eventually spread into the First World War in 1914. In 1939, separate conflicts in Europe and Asia eventually merged into one worldwide conflict. And obviously I'm talking about the First and Second World War there. And at the time, people experienced these events as separate crises. They didn't necessarily lump them all together and say, this is a World War I, this is World War II. And only later did history connect the dots. Which raises the question now today, are we watching isolated conflicts unfold? Or are we actually living through the early stages of what will eventually become, or maybe retrospectively be named as World War III?